Hi everyone, my name is Carole Kramer Arsenault and you're tuning into Tranquilo's Facebook Live Thursday broadcast. Sorry about the delay, we had a few technical difficulties. Fingers crossed that we're good to go. If you can hear me loud and clear, you can give me a like just to make sure that things are working. In today's video, I'll be talking about healthy sleep habits. We'll be talking a lot about babies. If you know anyone who has a baby or is pregnant, anyone who you think may benefit from this video, please tag them. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Carole Kramer Arsenault, and I'm a registered nurse. I'm a maternity nurse. I'm the founder of Boston Baby Nurse, and I am an author. My latest book was released earlier this year in the spring, and it is called Newborn 101. And on the personal side, I'm also a mom of 3 children. Although they're not babies, they're not young anymore, I do remember that time as if it was yesterday. Never forget that. So, okay, so please click like if you can hear me loud and clear, and if you think you know someone who may benefit from this video, for this broadcast, please tag them. And I'd like to thank the folks at Tranquilo for asking me to be their guest speaker today. So if you're just tuning in, I'm Carole Kramer Arsenault, and we are going to be talking about establishing healthy sleep habits. So I broke it down. We have a lot of content to go over today, and what we'll start with is really number one, how do we start practicing good sleep habits? And number one is you can start them early. Start teaching healthy sleep habits as early as 4 to 6 weeks. The younger the baby is, the easier it is to break habits, or the easier it is to establish good habits. We won't be talking today about babies that are under 6 weeks old. You know, those babies, they're still too young to, put on any type of a schedule, and really the expectation is that they just eat as much as they can. They eat a lot, and we want them to gain weight. So for today's broadcast, we're going to be focusing on babies 6 weeks and older, healthy babies, babies who are gaining weight, and have no medical issues. So the first habit we want to create is with a young baby. And what tends to happen is that after the first 6 weeks or so, parents will continue that same type of feeding. So when mom comes home from the hospital with a 1-2 week old baby, and the baby's 1 week old and 2 weeks old, the goal is really to feed every 2 hours, sometimes round the clock. When babies leave the hospital, they lose a little bit of weight, so the goal is to we want them to gain that weight. And we also, if mom's breastfeeding, want her to establish a good breastfeeding supply. So feeding is important during those first few weeks. And then what happens is babies get a little older, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, they've regained their weight, they're feeding well, mom has a great supply of breast milk, or if mom's bottle feeding. And what tends to happen is that parents will continue feeding the same way. So right around 4, 5, 6 weeks or so, babies don't need to be fed every 1 to 2 hours. And by doing this, we are setting our babies up to expect to be fed every couple of hours. So what tends to happen is that parents will continue feeding the same way. They'll feed their baby every time the baby wakes or fusses, and when the babies get a little bit older, it's okay to space it. So, baby may wake up, be fussy, but it doesn't mean that you need to feed the baby again. So the first sort of, just to make it clear, the first healthy sleep habit that we can establish when the baby is about 6 weeks old is a flexible, simple feeding plan. And again, this isn't for everyone. You know, there's no right or wrong way to do this. At Boston Baby Nurse, we get a lot of calls from parents who need help and who are exhausted and whose babies are up. So, you know, so this is really geared toward getting the baby on a little bit of a schedule so that mom and, you know, the family can get a little bit of rest and that the baby can sleep well too. So anyway, back to this little 6-week-old baby that we have who's up every couple of hours feeding. So the first thing I would say to the mom is, let's space the feeding out. Let's, you know, go 3 hours between feeds if we can. If you've been feeding the baby every hour, then, you know, maybe let's go for 2.5 hours. And so what we're doing is we're letting the baby's tummy empty so that he can actually get a nice full feed. What happens when we're feeding the baby all the time is the baby will feed a few minutes and then go to sleep for a few minutes. And then the baby wakes up and then mom will either try to breastfeed or bottle feed. The baby takes a little bit and sleeps again. So we call this grazing, you know, and the baby comes on and off grazing and never quite has a full tummy and never quite gets a good night's sleep. So we want to eliminate that. And, you know, it's actually very good for the baby to have a little bit of consistency, you know, to have an empty tummy and then to have a full tummy. It also helps to get the baby sleeping a little bit better when they have a full tummy. I'm going to put my glasses on. There, you can see a little bit better. All right, so number 2, healthy sleep habits. Make sure your baby's getting enough sleep. Many newborns don't get enough sleep, so we want to make sure that baby is napping and baby is sleeping as he should be. Overtired babies don't sleep well at all. The harder it is for them to fall asleep if you let them get overtired. Keeping a baby awake will not make the baby sleep longer. Once a baby is overtired, it's really hard to get the baby back into a little nap or sleep routine. So this is actually perhaps the most misunderstood concept that parents have. You know, if I keep my baby up all day, my baby will sleep all night, when in fact, the opposite is true. If we keep our babies up all day, they become so overtired that it's hard for them to shut down. And the baby will be fussy, they don't eat great, they're just cranky. So we want to make sure that our baby is actually sleeping well. And this kind of coincides with that first healthy sleep habit that we talked about, and putting the baby on a little bit of a schedule. So if we feed our baby every 3 hours, in between, the expectation is that that baby's going to sleep. And so if the baby wakes up after 20 minutes, you know, we're going to let him go, shush him, rub his tummy so that he can go and hopefully fall back asleep. We don't want to wake that baby up, feed him, and then start this whole cycle again of feeding, brief little feeds, brief little naps. So, you know, so the goal is number one is to make sure that we are feeding the baby every 2 to 3 hours and giving him time to have an empty tummy so that he can fill up and take a nice nap. And then number 2, the healthy sleep habit is actually to help that baby get a good nap in between, not that 20 minutes. And when a baby has a full tummy, many times they will also have a good nap. I'm just going to have a drink of water. Okay, so we have 1, 2. The third healthy sleep habit is to manage your baby's naps. So 1, 2, 3, these are really all interrelated. Managing your baby's naps. Regular naps are important for babies. Napping during the day can help your baby sleep better at night. Length of nap, it's tough. Most newborns, young babies, they sleep in short periods, an hour at a time. It's not until the baby gets to be, 6, 7, 8 months that you get that nice 2 or 3 hour nap if you're lucky. So, we're talking now about the newborns and the young babies. And we want to give them the opportunity to nap. They'll have shorter naps, they'll have frequent naps throughout the day. But the rule of thumb is that, every 2 to 3 hours, the baby's sleeping. And if a baby's like under 3 months or so, it's pretty much every 90 minutes the baby will nap. The idea for creating and being consistent with the naps is that babies really do thrive on consistency, and knowing that their body becomes accustomed to taking a nap, and if they miss the nap, the whole day can get thrown up. So this is not to say that mom needs to stay in the house every day and to maintain this consistency. It's fine if the baby naps in the car. Occasionally the baby will nap in the stroller, but the goal is that structure, even in a baby's, a young baby, a little bit of structure and consistency with napping does great to improve sleep and eating. So when a baby's well rested, this baby will wake up smiling and laughing and cooing in the crib, and then this baby will also he will eat. And most of the time that they'll be a good eater. If the baby wakes up crying and they're not ready to wake up, they're still half asleep, and if we get them up too soon, they may not want to feed, and then we have a baby who's overtired and just not happy. So it's important that we make sure that our babies get enough sleep. It's also, important that we have the baby on a little bit of a schedule during the day, and that we break that grazing habit, that we don't have a baby who's just like feeding round the clock. I mean, it's exhausting for moms. We do it the first 2 or 3 weeks when the baby needs to eat, but by week 4 or 5, it's exhausting, and it's tough for mom even to get a shower in if she's constantly feeding the baby. So, and it doesn't need to be like that, because babies will, with a little bit of patience, will lean towards going on a schedule. Babies, they do like schedules, and they, a little bit of fussiness at first is okay. And we will talk about ways to soothe our baby. So I just have my notes over here that I have a lot of information, and I just want to make sure that I cover everything clearly. So let's just move along. We talked about naps, and also talked a little bit about bedtime, okay, and establishing a bedtime ritual, a routine, as early as 6 weeks. And so these can all, these habits, the routines, we can start them early. They'll be modified and changed as the baby, gets a little bit older. But we can talk about this, the first kind of routine that you would create for a newborn may look something like a bath and maybe a book, and then we feed the baby, and then the baby goes to sleep. So a bedtime routine is important. And again, when they're small, you won't be able to read this baby, a book. That's unrealistic. So what I would do is, either bathe the baby or a sponge bath, put the baby's pajamas on, and then we'd come back to the baby's room and sit in a chair, and maybe, I'd have the same book, like a little book with some pictures, and just, have the baby look through that, and, we can rock a little bit. So the baby starts to create, associations, like, this routine will lead to bedtime. And so really just creating associations with the baby's room, with the activities that we're doing, and we can continue that. We'll change a little bit. We'll modify it as the baby gets older. And one thing that is real important to do when we are talking about nighttime sleep and getting the baby on a schedule is not to put the baby to sleep yourself. That's one of the mistakes we make is, getting our babies to sleep and then putting the baby in the crib. And our goal is really to give the baby an opportunity to learn how to fall asleep on his own. And the only way to do that is to put that baby in his crib when he's still a little bit awake. And I think if I could give one word of advice, that's it, to someone about newborns, it would be put your baby down drowsy but awake. And I'm sure many of you have heard that out there. If you're listening, please, send a comment, send me a like, let me know how old your baby is, and sort of what type of bedtime routines you have for your newborn. One suggestion, and when you have your nighttime routine so that your baby isn't asleep, may be to feed in a different room. You can feed the baby in a different room and then come back and maybe change a diaper, because that will get the baby to be a little more awake. That when they're real little newborns at 6, 7, 8 weeks, it's hard to keep them up. It's hard. They fall asleep. So after the feeding, changing a diaper, tickling their cheek or their toes will wake them up just enough, so that they're drowsy, and then you can put them down in their cribs. This is also a great time, to use the Tranquilo Mat. Babies, if they transition from, being in your arms, being rocked, and they're used to going into their cribs already asleep, a little bit of soothing before we put them into the crib can be really helpful. So as the baby gets older, we have 3-month, 4-month, 5-month, 6-month-old baby, we'll feed the baby, change the baby, ready for bed, but they're still quite awake. They're not as sleepy as the 3-week-old baby or the 3-month-old baby. So we'll use our soothing techniques to get the baby drowsy. And we mentioned the Tranquilo Mat. That's a great one. We can swaddle a baby. We can walk around and get the baby just a little bit drowsy. And it's usually pretty easy. Babies are tired. It's nighttime, and they're usually tired. So with a little bit of effort, using our soothing techniques, we can get the baby pretty sleepy. Not asleep, but eyes closed. Even the pacifier, is fine. You'll hear all kinds of information on pacifiers, good, bad. But really, when the baby is little or when you're trying to soothe, it's helpful, and it can help to calm a baby down. It can also help to make the baby drowsy. You can take the pacifier out when you put the baby in his crib, but these are just tools to use to get your baby tired. And once he's drowsy and asleep, we're going to put him down in his crib. Many times, we put him down in the crib and we walk away. And the baby's sort of left there for a few minutes thinking, hey, what happened? He'll wake up again. So when you put the baby down, you might want to stay a few extra seconds and sort of rub his tummy so that it's a slow transition. And again, if you happen to have like the mat underneath the baby, that will take his attention and sort of help him to focus on calming down again. So we've talked about teaching your baby sleep habits early. We've talked about making sure your baby gets enough sleep. We've talked about managing naps, and we've talked about committing to a bedtime routine. If we have 6 more, so we've got plenty more to cover. But if anyone has any questions about these particular topics, the napping routines, please send your comments along, and we'll be happy to answer. If you're watching this broadcast at a later date, it's not too late to send your questions. I will be checking for the next month. So give us a like. Let us know you're out there. Let us know you're listening. Let us know where you're from, how old your baby is. And I'll also be answering questions for the next month or so. So the number 5 we talked about a little bit is putting your baby down to sleep while he's still awake, and really helping to teach the baby good sleep habits. At Boston Baby Nurse, we get calls a lot from new parents, and at Boston Baby Nurse, we provide services to new and expecting parents, support services, and really the number 1 call that we get are from parents who have a 3-4-month-old baby who just won't sleep, is up all night. So they may go to sleep, but yet they wake up constantly, throughout the night. And having done this for 10 years, and we have a whole team of experts, and we have a pediatrician that we also consult with. There's just a few basic techniques that really will make a difference. And the drowsy but awake, putting your baby to sleep awake is huge. Once those overnight sleeping periods start to get consolidated and the baby's sleeping in longer stretches, the daytime naps will start to go into a schedule as well. So nighttime usually comes first, and then the daytime follows. What's important is that everyone's on the same page. So we had a mom who was doing this, excuse me, and she was putting her baby down, drowsy but awake, and the baby was sleeping and things were good. And then her daycare person came, or her nanny, and did the opposite. And really, those good habits that were taught were unlearned pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that, if you're putting your baby down to sleep a certain way, that everyone else is doing that as well. Grandmothers, dads. So it's important because the baby gets mixed messages. Before we go on to number 6, like one last thing about the drowsy and awake is that when you put your baby to sleep, or we rock him and he goes to sleep, and then we put him in his crib, when he wakes up, he will expect the same conditions that initially were in place when he went to sleep. So that could be, if you were rocking your baby, he's going to wake up and think, what's going on? And so when that baby starts to learn how to go to sleep on his own, you put him down, you do the drowsy but awake. When he wakes up, he'll look around and he'll eventually be able to get himself to go back to sleep. And that's a gift. That's a gift for your baby. Babies need sleep. And, sometimes there's a little fussing involved with that. And the babies don't necessarily know what's best for them. Their only form of communication is to fuss. So you may have a little protesting. The older the baby is, the louder the protesting can be. But in the long run, having a baby who has healthy sleep habits, who's napping during the day, and who's sleeping pretty good at night, that's a really good thing, and babies developmentally need to have these long stretches of sleep. And there's so many studies that are done, and for new parents now, the last 2 or 3 years, just at Boston Baby Nurse as well, parents are telling me they are so confused because there's so many conflicting experts. And, let the baby cry, don't let the baby cry, rock the baby, and, put the baby to sleep next to you in a little, you call them, the bassinet that can attach to the mattress. I mean, there are all these different ways, you know, that work. And if it works for you, great. But for those parents that call us, these are the parents that, you know, they need to go back to work, but yet the baby's up, you know, every hour or so. And so when they call, they're just not sure, you know, who to talk to or what to do. And my advice for that is really like check in with the pediatrician and listen like to your gut, like your instinct. You know, we know what to do as parents, you know, for the most part. And in terms of coming up with the sleep routine or sleep habits that work for you, you need to make an informed decision. So what I'm doing is giving you the information, and how you use that, you know, is really up to you. You know, it is a fact, babies need to sleep. So, you know, that's why we're spending time today just talking about the importance of that. You know, and a lot of parents, and I'm a mom of 3. I totally remember my babies, my first baby not sleeping, and I would let him cry for 20 minutes, and then I couldn't listen to it anymore, and I'd pick him up. The next night, he'd cry for 30 minutes. The next night, it would be 40 minutes, right? Because I just couldn't follow through. And so what we teach parents now is, well, now that I've, you know, we've been doing this for so long, consistency is the key. And if you're not ready, then, you know, wait until you feel like, okay, I can do this. Half-hearted efforts don't work well. So again, if you have any questions, if you have a baby that you are trying to establish some healthy sleep habits, and you're not just, you have some questions or you're confused about what is right for him, please let us know. So healthy sleep habit number, 6, sleep patterns change. So that's an important one, is how your baby sleeps at 2 to 3 months will change at 4 to 5 months. And a lot of it has to do with the baby's sleep cycles, circadian rhythms, their brain. It's developing. And as it develops, the baby's sleep cycle will become more like an adult. And that's what happens at 4 months. A lot of you have probably heard of the 4-month sleep regression, right? Or sleep regressions. And I hear that a lot now. It's just like a popular term. And there is such thing as a sleep regression, but it's not the baby that's regressing. Sleep regressions happen for a reason. And right around 4 months of age, about 4 months, the baby's sleep starts to become much like our sleep as an adult. Or prior to that, the baby's sleep was very different. They had different sleep cycles. They start to have sleep cycles that are similar to adults. And so what that means is that the baby will start to wake up during the night. So for example, when you or I go to sleep, we wake up several times during the night and may not even remember it most of the time. And, we would wake up, someone would wake up and change their pillow or move a little bit and then go right back to sleep. And again, we might not even remember doing that. But a baby will start to do this as well. So he will wake up and not quite know how I'm going to do that. And then that's when we have that, sleep regression. So they're not regressing. Their patterns now are starting to develop and they're starting to mature. The baby has different sleep patterns at birth, and by 4 months, these sleep patterns are completely different. So when your baby wakes up, he's 4 months and he's starting to wake up, they don't need anything from us. Right? So what tends to happen in the parents that I speak with, so the baby will start waking up and mom will think, oh, I don't think I fed him enough today. So she'll feed the 4-month-old, or she'll, wake him and rock him to sleep thinking, oh, maybe he's getting sick. And then the next night happens and now he's waking up 2 times and mom feeds him again. And, within 3 to 4 days, we can create a habit. And knowing that it's normal for babies to wake up, again, the most important thing we can do is help our babies learn how to fall asleep on their own, right? And that's why all this, we talked about earlier, it's so important, because as the baby develops, it gets older, it's like even 1-2-year-olds will have sleep regressions, right? And we want to make sure that we give our babies, we teach them healthy sleep habits. So we talked a little bit about sleep regressions. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I do want to talk about number 7, baby sleep changes happen throughout the first 2 years. And why do these sleep changes happen? Well, sometimes it can be because the baby's ill. It could be because the baby has teething. So that's like one scenario. And of course, if that's the case, you would hold your baby, soothe your baby, and it's important that the baby's cared for. But if it doesn't have to do with an illness or teething, some of the causes of sleep disruptions could be when the baby is about to have a developmental milestone, a growth spurt, or baby will roll over. So during these periods of time, starting at 4 months all the way to 2 years, when a baby starts to have a milestone, right before that happens, many times they'll have sleep, their sleep will be disrupted. Again, and you might hear that being called a regression. It doesn't matter, what it's called. The baby's sleep will change, and the reason is because they're learning to roll over. They're learning to crawl, sit up, stand, walk. All of these milestones may cause a baby to have sleep disruptions. So many things are happening in that baby's brain. He's learning so much. There's so much going on. And then sometimes when the baby's sleeping at night during these periods, it's overstimulation. The brain's working overtime will cause them to wake up occasionally. And when this happens, the best response is just to let them go to sleep on their own. Try not to walk in if you can. We don't want to create anything out of this. Hopefully it will resolve in a few days. Okay, so healthy sleep habit number 9. Eliminate dream feeds. Okay, so a lot of you have heard about dream feeds. I hear a lot about dream feeds, and I will say that dream feeds are okay if your baby is 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, 4 weeks old, very early on. But dream feeds, what a dream feed is well, the baby's asleep, we will get them up and feed them a bottle, or we'll get them onto the breast. They may not actually be awake, that we know. They're not consciously awake. However, we are disrupting their sleep pattern. So what we're doing is programming our babies to wake up to be fed. So the dream feed, think about what that actually is and why your baby needs it. You don't want to interrupt his natural rhythm. You don't want to interrupt, his circadian rhythm that's developing by waking him up and feeding him. So we're going to try to eliminate those dream feeds. And then the last, the good news, I'm going to say number 10, I think this is all good stuff, but number 10 is babies can quickly form bad habits, but they can really quickly form good habits, right? So in wrapping up, the most important point to remember is, we talked about being consistent, and really that this is not stressful. This shouldn't be stressful for you. Following just some of these simple techniques could help your baby to sleep better. Better sleeper equals happier baby, happier parent, less stressful in the house. And really that's what it's all about. I think in looking back, when my children were small, I really, really wish someone had told me not to stress so much about it, because you trust your instincts and, you know, let things work out, because they will work out gradually. And the important part is that, you know, you're equipped with, that you're informed. You're informed with the proper information. And what we discussed today is, you know, all in line with what the American Academy of Pediatrics supports. It's not, you know, Carole's way or Boston Baby Nurse way. You know, we adhere to the guidelines established by the American Academy of Pediatrics, and, you know, just our goal really is just to clarify them for you. And when you have these tools, you know, you can use, you know, whatever it is that you've learned, you know, to help your baby. It will be different, you know, at different times, because babies change so much, you know, during that first early period. So what I want to, wrapping up, I want to leave time for questions and answers, and also wanted to I talked about our offer, Tranquilo offer that we have for viewers today, and it is a copy of Newborn, 50% off, a copy of Newborn 101. This book was just released in June, and it is filled with all kinds of information for there's pregnancy and newborn, and a lot of good stuff in here. So definitely a good read if you're pregnant, if you just had a baby, or if you know someone who has a baby. The code is Tranquilo50. So what you'll do is you'll go on, excuse me, to the Boston Baby Nurse website, info@bostonbabynurse.com. Send us your name and address with the code Tranquilo50, and we'll send you out a book. So let us start with some questions that we have. All right. Okay, so one of the questions, my baby is almost 10 weeks old, and I'm going to be transitioning back to work soon. The problem is that my baby continues to wake up to feed every 2 hours. He doesn't eat a lot, but I can't get him to fall back asleep unless he's at the bottle. What do I do? Okay, so this is sort of what we talked about, you know, that 10-week-old baby, you know, that 3-4 month period. We need to let him learn how to fall asleep. So the best thing to do is try to start putting baby down drowsy but awake, drowsy but awake. And it takes about 3 days. It takes about 3 days or so for the babies to get into that habit. And when, you know, the night starts to work, the daytime naps will also fall into place. So not feeding the baby, you know, sometimes when we feed the baby at night a lot, he doesn't eat during the day. So really, you know, trying to not feed the baby so much at night, try to put him down asleep, and, you know, practice healthy sleep habits. Okay, do another question. How much should my baby sleep? Okay, how old is my baby? Okay, so I'm not sure how old the baby is, but infants sleep a lot. In fact, they spend more time sleeping than anything else. The average newborn sleeps around 16 to 18 hours a day. And as they grow, their sleep gradually decreases to 11 to 14 hours by the age of 1. But every baby is different. Question: when will my baby start sleeping through the night? That's a good question. And you know, every baby is different, and it's hard to answer that because it's, you know, sets an expectation, and you know, every baby is different. However, that being said, babies between 4 and 6 months can start to have longer stretches of sleep at night. They may still need one more feed, maybe a feed, maybe not, depending on how much your baby weighs. But typically by 6 months, your baby should be able to, as long as the baby's gaining weight, the baby is healthy, there are no medical issues. You know, most babies have the ability to start sleeping through the night by 6 months of age. Question: my 4-week-old baby sleeps through the night. Should I try to wake him up to feed? Good question. So, baby sleeping through the night, should I wake him up? Baby is healthy, gaining weight. There is no reason to wake that baby up. You know, it's a good thing, a sleeping baby. And some babies have different personalities, and they just are easier to sleep. So my suggestion would be not to wake the baby up. Make sure that the baby's getting you know, adequate food and he's gaining weight, and you know, try to maintain that. You might take a couple steps back, but certainly if your baby can go for you know, a long stretch like that, that sort of sets a standard. You know, if he can do it one night, he can probably continue to do that. So certainly don't wake him up, and know that it may change a little bit, but you know, all in all, your baby has this ability. So instead of, you know, taking a few steps backwards, if he starts to wake, you know, use this information and go forward. Okay. Sorry, a few technical difficulties here. Sorry about that. Just trying to find these, to read the questions. They're not all coming up, so I'm sorry. I have a few that I have, but I guess there's several more, and I'd love to get to them. If we don't get to all the questions, I will answer them all. So please send along your comments, you know, any suggestions, anything you'd like to hear. Are there any topics? Okay, so we're going to get some more questions. We can continue. So if you're just tuning in, welcome. I hope that you will watch the broadcast. We're talking about healthy babies. We're talking about healthy babies and healthy sleep habits. Okay. All right. Well, let me add one more of the questions that I have here. Do I have to put my baby on a sleep schedule? That's a good question. And the answer is no. No, there's no right or wrong way to do this. You know, it's what your family, what you feel comfortable with doing. And you know, we had talked about it earlier. Babies like schedules. They don't know that they like schedules, right? But we know what's best for babies. And when the baby is on a little bit of a schedule, you'll notice that he sleeps better, he eats better, they're overall happier. And you know, we have to be realistic. We cannot, you know, expect that we have to stick to the schedule, no matter what. And because there will be times where you're traveling. There will be times when, the baby's just off, and that's okay. That's okay. So really the goal is to, you do your best. And, and you can always check in with your pediatrician. The information that I provide you is all based on guidelines set by the American Academy of Pediatrics, but it does not take the place of your baby's pediatrician. So please, always check in with them. All right, a few more questions here from Conchita. How can I put my baby drowsy if he gets mad when I take him off the breast? He is 5 months old and usually goes to sleep at around 8 p.m. Okay, so I guess two things come to mind. So if mom's breastfeeding baby and he gets mad when she takes him off. Well, my first thought is that is he still hungry? I mean, babies at 5 months, they need a lot of food. So I would just want to make sure that the baby's getting enough food. Get that baby in the breast, make sure he's hungry, and maybe top him off with, if he's still hungry, some pumped breast milk, offer the second breast to him. If he's full, right, and I don't know that, but let's, assume the other thing, in that the baby's full, but he's crying because he wants to suck on something, then I would recommend a substitution. So, he's sucking on the breast. Babies love to suck because it calms them. And if he's full and he's not hungry, he's crying because he wants to continue suckling. So if you want to use your finger, a pacifier, all those things will work great for the baby, and he can suck on that. And if the baby's crying for a few minutes, if he's upset when you take him off the breast, swaddle him, or use one of the techniques that we talked about, the soothing techniques, to calm him down, to calm the baby down, depending on what it is that he needs. If he's not hungry, you could use the pacifier, the Tranquilo Mat. You could swaddle the baby and see if that can calm him down. Even swaddling the baby and then sort of walking around the room, right, with him will start to get him to stop crying. And then when they stop crying, you can start to put him into the crib. All right, we have another question here. Our baby has always been a good sleeper. He wakes up, but as soon as he's full, he sleeps for another 3 to 4 hour stretch. Lately, these stretches are getting shorter, and I don't think he's hungry. The only way I can get him to go to sleep is if I rock him. As soon as he lays in his crib, he gets up, wide awake, and cries again. We do this over and over. What can I do to break this habit? I'm even desperate enough to climb into his crib with him so I can get a few hours of sleep. Okay, so again, this is the type of question that we get at Boston Baby Nurse all the time. And let's see, this little guy is, what did she say? He's four and a half months old. So, at 4 months, we talked about babies' sleep changes, and they're going to get up every couple of hours because that's normal. That's what babies do. So making sure that the baby has enough food during the day. It doesn't seem this baby's fully fed, but he's crying because he's looking for a way to get to sleep. He doesn't know how to get to sleep because he's always been rocked. So this is a great time to actually try to introduce the healthy sleep habits, and put him down when he's drowsy but awake. And if he fusses a little bit, which he will, you can go back into the room and rub his tummy, calm him down, and then you walk out again and give him that opportunity. If he's fussing a little bit, you know, I guess it depends on, you know, every baby is different and every parent is different in what they, you know, can tolerate. We certainly don't want him to be, you know, crying and upset and frustrated, but a little bit of fussing, sometimes babies need to blow off a little steam in order to get over the hump to go to sleep. So, you know, give him that opportunity, 5 or 10 minutes. And if he's not asleep, go back in. You can rub his tummy, calm him down, and then walk out again. So you might have to do this for 1 or 2 nights. And, you know, if you're consistent, by night 3, you'll see a huge change. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions, if you think of anything, you know, after the broadcast, feel free to send that over. I'll be checking the comments and the questions. If you have, you know, any friends or family that are having a baby, you know, have them watch this video. It could be a lot of good information. And it's great. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to have this broadcast today. And again, if you are interested in our offer, Newborn 101, we will send you a copy of this book at 50% off. And what you do is send an email, info@bostonbabynurse.com, and the discount code is Tranquilo50. Thank you, and good luck with this. This is the best time ever.